If you, everyone could take a seat, we'll get the ball rolling here tonight.
Mr. Noonan?
Thank you, Mary. Okay, the hour of 6:30 PM having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning Board. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel. The video will also be available for streaming on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Will staff please conduct the roll?
Harold Farrington,
Here.
Roberta Mastrogiovanni,
Here.
Mayor Jay Khan,
Here.
Councilor Mike Remy, Sarah Vizani, Ryan Clancy, Kenneth Cost,
Here.
Armando Rangel,
Here.
and for the alternates, Stefan Mayu, Brandon Markelin,
Here.
Tammy Adams, and Michael Hafer.
Here.
And Mr. Chair, you have room if you'd like to invite the alternates to participate as voting members.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner. I would, in fact, like to invite both alternates to participate in tonight's meeting as voting members. Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda are the minutes of the previous meeting, March 24th, 2025. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'd like to move to approve the minutes of the previous meeting from March 24th, 2025.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Khan. Any comments? Questions about the minutes? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes for the March 24, 2025 meeting, please indicate. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. All right. At this time, we'll move to one of our standing agenda items, which is the final vote on conditional approvals. As a matter of practice, the board will issue a final vote on all conditionally approved plans after all of the conditions precedent have been met. This final vote will be the final approval and will start the 30-day appeal clock. May I ask staff if there are any applications tonight that are ready for a final vote?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are 3 applications that are ready for a final vote. The first one is PB-2025-05, which is a boundary line adjustment between 91 Maple Ave and 521 Park Avenue. This one, pull up the conditional letter. All right, so there were 4 conditions precedent for this application. They're all the standard conditions for a boundary line adjustment. They included the owner's signature on the plan, submittal of 4 full paper copies and 2 Mylar copies, a submittal of a check to cover recording fees, and inspection of the lot monuments by the Public Works Director or their designee, and all of those conditions have been met.
Thank you. May I ask for a motion for final approval of the boundary line adjustment?
I'd like to move to issue final approval for PB-2025-05 at 91 Maple Ave and 521 Park Avenue.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Khan. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions regarding the boundary line adjustment? Seeing none, we'll proceed to the vote. All those in favor of the final approval for PB-2025-05, Cedar Crest boundary line adjustment, indicate. Any opposed? Final approval is granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next application is for the same project. So this is PB 2025-04. This is the site plan and conditional use permit for the solar array. And there were 5 conditions precedent to final approval. Those included adding a note to the plan regarding the access road and making sure that it's upgraded with gravel to support construction vehicles. The owner's signature on the plans, submittal of 5 full-size paper copies and a digital copy of the final plans, submittal of security in a form and amount acceptable to the community development director or their designee. And then the last condition of approval was just met a few minutes ago, which was that the lot line adjustment shall receive final approval. So all of those conditions have been met. I did also want to draw your attention to your packet because there was a small change to the site plan that we just wanted to draw your attention to. If you look at page 29 of your packet, it's really just the location of the electrical disconnect that was changed from the back corner of the building to a different corner of the back of the building. So it's a pretty small change, but we did want to draw your attention to that. And we also wanted to let you know, since there was quite a good deal of public comment at that meeting, there is a memo from the Parks and Recreation Director dated April 1st that starts on page 31 of your packet that provides an update on the city's plans for the community garden relocation. So
Mayor, I have a procedural question. This is just board action. This is not a public hearing.
That's correct, yep. So this is just you verifying that the conditions precedent have been met.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's what I thought. Okay. Thanks for the update. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to issue final approval for PB-2025-04.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Khan. Okay, any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Hafer?
I'd just like to make note that appreciate the efforts that the Parks and Rec Director went through to mitigate some of the concerns that were raised at the last meeting. I know it's not purview to our decision tonight, but as a citizen was appreciative to see the level of effort that went into that.
Thank you for mentioning that. I echo your comments. Anyone else? All right, let's call the vote. All those in favor of the major site plan PB-2025-04, please indicate. Any opposed? Final approval for PB-2025-04.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there's one final application that's ready, which is SPR-593 modification number 2. And this is for 20 Central Square, the Bank of America, which had some lighting changes that had to get approved through a major site plan. There were only 2 conditions precedent, which were that the owner's signature appear on the plan and submittal of 5 full-size paper copies of the final plan set, and both of those have been met.
Thank you. So let's, I'll entertain a motion for this project.
I'd move to issue final approval for SPR-593, modification number 2 at 20 Central Square.
Thank you, Ms. Mastrogiovanni. Second? Mr. Hafer? Thank you. Okay, any question?
I just want to make sure, we're talking about Central Square at this point.
That is correct, yeah. Or
Okay.
Right
I was
behind
looking
it.
for something in our packet, but, right, got it.
Yep. And
All
it
that's
can
in
be
our-
confusing to say modification number 2, but that was the entire project that we were, when we reviewed it. Modification number 1 was quite a bit in the past,
Yeah.
so there's no change. It's the same thing we saw where they were putting the new lighting in.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor of SPR-593, modification number 2, major site plan, please indicate. Any opposed? Okay, final approval issued for SPR 593, modification number 2. Any others, Ms. Brenner? Good, thank you.
That was it.
Okay. Next on our agenda is an extension request. This is PB-2024-14, Cottage Court Conditional Use Permit, the Hillside Protection Conditional Use Permit, and Major Site Plan for Timberlane Woods Development at 0 Drummer Road. Applicant Fieldstone Land Consultants, on behalf of owner Christopher Ferris, requests a first extension to the deadline to satisfy the precedent conditions of approval for the proposed cottage court development consisting of 6 buildings and 36 units on the parcel at 0 Drummer Road. Tax map plat number 515-015-000. The property is 13.1 acres in size and is located in the low-density district. So I will invite the applicant to speak on the request. Mr. Noonan, if you'd state your name for the record.
Thank you. John Noonan with Fieldstone Land Consultants here on behalf of Christopher E. Ferris, who is the owner and applicant. We're looking to have an extension to the conditional approval as he's still working on obtaining some architectural drawings, finalizing that, and then our alteration of terrain permit. We were hoping to have, but since the expiration date was the 27th of this month, we wanted to ask for an extension because we have not yet received the application or the permit. But we believe that'll be approved any day, so.
Okay, thanks. Board members have any questions for the applicant? Or for staff? I don't think we're going to get a staff report, correct? Right, so feel free to ask a question of Mr. Noonan or of staff at this time. Mr. Cost?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How long is are you expecting the extension to be needed? Because you mentioned the architectural drawings and things are still held up, and so the other requirement sounds like it's coming any day. But and the reason I'm asking is when I drive by that site, I think I have the right site. It's pretty much been graded over. I think there was timbering and other stuff there, and so I'm just thinking about if this goes on for a long time and we get into rainy seasons, looking at runoff and all of that from there, because, I don't know that it's all been protected yet. Maybe it has been, but that's one concern about the extension.
Well, Mr. Costa's standard extension is 180 days,
Yeah,
so I think that's,
okay.
That's
What
what
he's
we'd
at-
be
what he's
asking for
requesting.
is the 180 days for the extension. You're correct, they've logged the site, and that was before we came for planning board approval initially, so it was logged, and it's been left in that state since. So they're looking, the applicant is having, the two things that remain is having the architectural plans submitted and our alteration terrain permit. So once those are obtained, he'd be moving forward with the project.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Khan?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, curious then, if it's 180 days, I suppose, from this meeting, what, it's taking us out to October? Is that where we are?
Yep, that's, yes.
Yeah, it's 180 days from when the plan would have expired. So, yeah. So it's April
It's
27th.
was
Yeah, so it'll be
yesterday.
180 days from April 27th.
Okay.
From tomorrow, yep.
Yeah, and just to, so I think probably on the same track as Mr. Cost, I think that takes us out about a year from our last consideration of this proposal. And I say that just so noted.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Mr. Cost?
Thank you. I don't know if we have it's in our purview, but is there, if it could be as long as we're saying 180 days, because that's what we're allowing, is there anything that could be done to kind of safeguard the site from runoff, erosion, mud, and all that stuff that might start happening over that time?
Well, the site was left with stumps in place as allowed by forestry practices and the alteration of terrain. Once they obtain their alteration of terrain permit, they could go in and put in the silt fence. So as part of the approval, we're going to have to stake out and flag where the wetland buffer is. So staff has to verify that when that's done, and then we could have them install the silt fencing at that time. There is more or less where the entrance is from the logging is the entrance of the driveway with this little bit widening for when the driveway goes in. However, that could be set up as the stabilized construction entrance. Overall, the site is fairly stable where the stumps were left in place of the trees. There's already a lot of small growth and trees coming back since it was logged. So I don't think there's an issue with runoff or stabilized slopes or anything at this time. But silt fencing just to protect the wetland resource and that buffer being flagged, I think would be the first thing that should be done once we have the AOT permit.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And this is another instance where it's not a public hearing, correct? Okay. All right, so thank you, Mr. Noonan. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for the extension.
I'll move to grant a 180-day extension to the time frame to satisfy the precedent conditions of approval for PB-2024-14.
Second.
Mayor Collins, thank you. All right, any comments? Discussion? Okay. Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor of approving the extension, please indicate. Any opposed? Extension has been granted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have a public hearing. This is, the project is PB-2025-06, Guittard Homes Cottage Court Development, Cottage Court Conditional Use Permit, Major Site Plan, and Surface Water Protection Continued Conditional Use Permit for 0 Court Street. Applicant Fieldstone Land Consultants, PLLC, on behalf of owner Guittard Homes, LLC, proposes a cottage court development consisting of 29 single-family units accessed by a private driveway on the undeveloped lot at 0 Court Street, TMP number 228-016-000. A surface water protection CUP is requested for impacts to the 30-foot surface water buffer. Additionally, a waiver has been requested from section 21.7.3.c of the Land Development Code related to light trespass. The parcel is 9.7 acres in size and is located in the low-density district. And just, I will mention, just for folks who are new to the planning board and the way things are assigned, the address of 0 Court Street is simply assigned as a 0 because it's an undeveloped parcel. So it doesn't really indicate where it is on Court Street. But presumably, if you're here about it, you know where it is. But just wanted to give you why it's a 0 Court Street at the moment. So with that, I will invite the applicant to present.
Thank you. Again, for the record, John Noonan with Fieldstone Land Consultants, here on behalf of Mike Guittard, who's also here tonight. So Michael Guittard is with Guittard Homes, who owns the land and will be developing and constructing the homes. So he is the
You know what, let me
developer.
stop you one second. I
Certainly.
skipped ahead of myself. Sorry about that. So I do want to ask staff first if we have a recommendation for completeness.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Megan Fortson, planner. The applicant has requested exemptions from submitting a historic evaluation and a screening analysis. Planning staff have made the preliminary determination that granting the requested exemptions would have no bearing on the merits of the application and recommend that the board accept the application as complete.
Thank you, Ms. Fortson. So I'll entertain a motion for completeness.
I'd like to present a motion to accept this application as complete.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Thank you, Mayor Khan. Any questions or comments about the completeness of the application? All right, so let's move to the vote. All those in favor of calling the application complete, please indicate. Any opposed? Application is deemed to be complete. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Now we're all ears for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, John Noonan with Fieldstone Land Consultants. I'm going to walk through the plans here, but ultimately, we utilize the new Cottage Court overlay district for this property to increase density. When we came in for a preliminary hearing, we had 31 homes on the site. In designing and further going into utilities plus stormwater design and management, we've trimmed down to and modified one of the driveways so that we have 29 units. So currently there's 29 homes on the plan, so that was what had changed from the preliminary hearing. The main driveways are laid out the same as what we had in the preliminary hearing. So for the project, everyone can hear me on this microphone. So we have Court Street at the bottom of our site plans. We're looking at coming in with a main driveway, coming up and ending at a hammerhead, ultimately building in 3 phases. So we're gonna have a connecting spur over to the Genesis property where there's an existing easement. So when we did the site walk, we had parked back here with Conservation Commission, walked in on the site here. So we have a connection spur, main driveway off of Court Street up to the cul-de-sac. So phase 1 is divided by where the wetland crosses through the property and flows down towards Court Street. So phase 1 would be 12 homes directly on Court Street and prior to the crossing of the wetland swale that's here. Phase 2 being here with the homes around the cul-de-sac, that would require that a box culvert, it's 4 feet in height, 6 feet wide, be installed across the wetland. That would then allow for utilities to cross and for the driveway to be built up to a phase 2 here. And then the third phase having the 6 homes out to the end where we have a hammerhead turnaround for emergency vehicle access and turnaround. And the site is serviced by municipal water and sewer, so we'd be extending from Court Street, following the road out, and looping water at the direction of the city engineer is to loop water over to the water lines that feed into the Genesis property along the easement here. So I know there's some questions on, the layout and ownership. So the homes would all be single-family residential, meeting the minimum requirement for footprint for cottage court and the maximum gross floor area. So we're just under the 1,250 square foot max gross average, where our homes average out to about 1,164 square feet in size, and that's the average for all the homes divided by the number of homes. So it's a mixture of 3 styles of home, all single-family residential, one type of home being a 2-bedroom unit, the other 2 types being a 3-bedroom unit. And we have the 3-bedroom units are 2 stories, well under the 35-foot max requirement for height of the roof. So overall, the property slopes from Court Street up to the back here. Along the rear of the property is a walking trail. We have it called out as a woods road. It's an easement that goes through the property. That trail remains, so that's called out locally as the route trail. Ultimately goes up towards Goose Pond and behind all the homes along Court Street, heading north. So that was an amenity that Mr. Cotard thought was great for, the homes here. So access and the trail has not been disturbed. Everything, we're maintaining trees around the trail and access to that trail. One of the other items of the site was with this wetland crossing that water drains down, flows behind Genesis, and then down through the site and to Court Street, and ultimately through a box culvert in Court Street, and then crosses and goes to the Ashwelot River across the road. So with that crossing, we have this box culvert and another box culvert up top where water drains through a collapsed culvert or a stone box culvert that's in the trail. So we're maintaining that crossing also with a box culvert so that the channel below is a native stream channel arched box culvert that goes over that. So with that wetland, we have the 30-foot buffer around each of the wetland areas. So that drove us to, do we end up designing to reduce to a 10-foot buffer, which is allowed under the cottage court, or what we decided to go with is we impact some areas of the buffer without others. Instead of just doing a blanket 10-foot down to 10 feet, is we were able to maintain 30 feet in some areas and then down to 10 feet in others, and try to give and take along that buffer. So that's what's highlighted in these pink lines here is the buffer around the green, which is the wetland areas. So that's what we presented to the Conservation Commission last week, who they recommended in favor of the project. We discussed the stormwater, the wetland impacts, which are basically just the 2 crossings for the box culverts being installed, and then the buffer impacts. So the only permanent buffer impacts that we have is where we're crossing the wetland with the box culverts, and then ultimately for grading and stormwater management. So that's the overall site plan. Ownership is going to be a HOA. These are going to be condominium units, so each home will be owned by the condominium owner. They'll have a limited common area around it, similar to a lot, so you'll have your own yard. Some of the units have garages, some have sheds for storage, and they each show a porch and a deck with each type of home. So it's a little mix of different types of houses interspersed between each phase. The upper phase spread out a little more than the more densely populated phase 1 has the most homes in it down at this end on Court Street. Overall, we tried to incorporate screening and leave some of the trees along the edge of the property, so we have a buffer area right on Court Street down in this corner. And then coming up along the edges of the property is what's outlined here in green is the extent of limit of clearing and trees to remain, which basically follows more or less the wetland areas and then the property lines. We provided grading and drainage plans, which have been reviewed from the city engineer for our stormwater management report on how stormwater is going to be handled, as part of the project. Overall disturbance is well over 100,000 square feet, so it's going to require a DES alteration terrain permit. So the state will review our stormwater management report, design, and all the erosion control measures that will be in place. With the wetland crossings, as we show for the two box culverts, that's going to require a DES wetland impact permit. So that will also go to DES, where they'll review our design of the box culvert and all of our erosion control measures and how we're going to cross and impact the wetland resource itself. On the other side of Court Street, like I mentioned, is the Ishwelot River. So as part of that, we are going to have a shoreland protection permit. So you have a 250-foot buffer around any listed river or lake in the state. So the Ishwelot River being one of those protected rivers, since we're within 250 feet along the front end of the property, just comes just right into the front here. So we have to apply for that DES permit as well. And they'll review based on the shoreland permit. Ultimately, it won't change much on our plans because we're not impacting within a 50-foot of the edge of the resource. Stormwater, ultimately, we're handled between the two phases. We designed the stormwater so it could also be built in phases. So as he builds phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, we basically have a stormwater management system in place. So we have a gravel wetland for phase 1 and a gravel wetland for phase 2, along with a level spreader and a small infiltration basin, along with treatment swale. So it treats the runoff, which is captured with catch basins in the roadway or private roadway, and then directed to these stormwater management systems. Phase 3, very similar. We're collecting water off of the road and from the homes runs down. We're doing a treatment swale and a small infiltration basin to meet the state standards. And then around every home, there's going to be a drip strip infiltration trench. So, as most people have in New Hampshire, it's 4 feet wide, 4 feet deep, 1.5 inch stone, and that allows the water off of the roof to drip directly and infiltrate into the ground. And then whatever doesn't infiltrate will outflow and be caught by treatment swales and run to the stormwater management systems. Utilities, so we provided profile and plan sheet for our utilities and the road grading. So as mentioned, we're going to be extending from Court Street the water and sewer. So at the direction of Brian Ruoff, the city engineer, we met last week because he had additional comments. Our initial review was done by Don Lucier, so we addressed his comments, and then Brian did a second review and had additional comments. So we met with them last week, addressed the comments, and ultimately we asked for that to be a condition of approval instead of trying to submit plans tonight. But ultimately, it's for our utilities on providing easements, line type for the water main, and connections for where we're connecting onto both Court Street and also the easement that's onto the Genesis property. So right now, Mr. Guittard is trying to get cost estimates and pricing things out. So the biggest thing that could change is ownership of the utility. So ultimately, we were having, when we submitted, we said that City of Keene would own water and sewer. However, looking at pricing, it might end up being owned by the HOA, depending on the material. So ductile iron prices are in fluctuation and potentially going up very high. As of right now, they're about double the price of the plastic water pipe. If it's plastic water pipe, it's not acceptable by the Public Works. Therefore, the HOA would have to own it if they went the route of plastic piping versus steel piping, the ductile iron. As part of the utilities, that also goes to DES, so the utilities are signed off for, they review the water and sewer connections, and the sewer permit is reviewed by the wastewater bureau at DES. So, provided overall utility plans. The lighting plan, so I want to mention when it was read in the agenda just now is that we had a waiver for lighting trespass, so that's actually been modified. So we, after it was noticed at the meeting, we ultimately changed the plan based on the comments. We had a light right here that was just over 0.1 at the property line. So what we did was we shifted this light further into the property, so it still lights the intersection. Ultimately, we're providing street lighting to meet the Cottage Court feel where they, even though these are private driveways, is to design it to a city road street feel. So we've provided landscape trees along the roadway and street lighting. And then we also just modeled was the lights on each house. So the lighting plan shows that we meet the standard for Keene with both the house lights and the street lighting. Landscaping plan, so I kind of just touched on this. It's fairly basic where we're doing trees along the street to provide, a community feel, break it up with trees and massing that are shade trees along the roadway. We are not showing each individual house landscaping, so that would be up to the person that buys their condominium unit on how they want to landscape. And then down at the main entrance, Mr. Guitard really wanted like a formal, nice entrance coming in, so it's going to be fences coming in at the entryway and plantings along at Court Street. This area here would be existing trees to maintain, and then along Court Street would be a fence line here. So a vinyl fence running along the Court Street frontage. And then we provided erosion control details, construction details, more construction details, and one exhibit on our steep slopes. So we didn't require a hillside protection cup application for this project. There are some steep slopes on site, but it's in the riverbank, or I shouldn't say riverbank, but the wetland bank here, where it drops down really significantly down here. It drops in elevation quite a bit along here and all the way to Court Street. The banks are very steep. So that's the only place that is impacted is where we put our box culvert in. So we have a small impact where our wetland impact is. And then the other steep slopes are where we're not impacting, which is up on the other side of the trail. So if anyone's familiar with that trail, the eastern side of that goes up very steep on that side, but most of it being off of the property, but we're not impacting that or anywhere near it. So that's our site plans overall. I'd like to open it up for questions.
I guess I'll start, Mr. Noonan. I don't know if you know the answer, but the different model, there's 3 different models, and there's, I guess, an option for garage as well. On the plans, it's not clear which homes are which model. Has that been determined yet ahead of time, or you're going to build custom for?
Yeah, so we submitted architectural floor plans and elevations for the 3 styles of home.
Right.
And then on our site plan, we have a key for if it's building home 1, 2, or 3. So we have building 1, 2, and 3.
Not been able to read that fine print.
So then, yeah, we show the number on each style of home. So it's a mix in phase 1 and phase 2. And the ones that can have a garage are shown with garages where they do fit. So ultimately, that's how we determined was the type of houses to get our overall average gross floor area to hit that 1,250 square feet. So we played around with house number 1, house number 2, house number 3 to get us within that, just below that average for the Cottage Court overlay. So that's how we determined the number of home 1, 2, and 3
Okay.
to the overall.
Thanks. And also, if my eyesight wasn't failing me, I think I counted 11 home units with garages.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's actually that's the build-to plan?
Yeah, so at this point, we're going with, I mean,
It'll be an option.
yeah, an option of garage on these, so.
Okay. I don't think it's pertinent to approval or not approval, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, we also showed there's small squares out back, so we did show some of them depicting a shed as well. So that would be an option.
Because
As much as
you
possible, is try to
mentioned,
give
it
someone.
would potentially impact the average square footage, depending on the mix of the models.
Right.
Okay. That's all I got. Other questions?
Can there be questions from the audience?
Not at this time. You'll have an opportunity. Mayor Khan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to understand the dimensions and the three different styles, 1, 2, and 3, 3 being the largest one, I think. What's the square footage in each of those three styles?
So we have, scoot this here.
Somebody was just showing the pictures of the models. That might be useful.
Yes, yeah, we have both elevation.
I mean, they're in our packet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can we show them on the TV screens?
Are they shown in the back there?
They're in the packet. I have 8.5 by 11s on the 3 if you want me to pass
No.
these around, but
Yeah,
No,
there we go.
here we
Now we got them.
Say it was on.
Okay.
Yeah, so this first option that's on right now, that's house option number 1. The footprint area is 627 square feet. The area, let's see, phase 1, 12 homes. Let's see. Yeah, footprint, total square foot, 627 square feet. And then building 2 is 1,250 square feet. And the footprint being 772, so that's a 2-story building. And then number 3 is 1,394 square feet total with 852 feet as the footprint. So for cottage court, you have to be under 900 square feet of footprint. Your square footage has to be under, for the entire, all 29 homes, has to average out below the 1,250 square feet.
What is that, like a 20 by 30 or something like that?
They vary in size, but yeah, it's approximately the smaller home would be about that size.
So, and I guess so that everybody understands that there's a mix of these three different styles.
Correct.
In total, they average 1,164 square feet, I think is what you said.
Correct.
Yeah, and they're scattered throughout. There are a few more number ones, the smaller square footage in phase 1, and the further up the hill that you go, they get a little larger.
That's correct. Yeah, so phase 1, we have 2 house number 1 options, 8 house number 2 option, and 2 house number 3 options. Phase 2 has 4 building 1, the small homes, 8 of the building 2, and only 1 of the building 3, the big one. And then phase 3 is all option 3, which is the biggest ones. So we were planning, because of the topography here too, is that these would have walkout basements as well for phase 3.
Which doesn't,
It doesn't count to our gross
right.
total
And-
average.
And to clarify on the garage and shed, those are not a part of the square footage calculation.
Correct. Porches, garages, sheds do not count towards your gross square footage average.
Yeah, and there's nothing that prohibits then on the style 1 or 2 for a shed or a garage to be with those properties.
Correct. It would be the living space only, so it wouldn't change if they took an option 1, the small home, and added a garage to it. It wouldn't change the total calculation of average gross square footage.
Yeah, and
It is a little confusing on how it's broken out
Well, I
for
think
a cottage court, but
I
that's correct.
appreciate the clarifications. I think you've made it pretty clear.
Excellent.
But the style 2 is pretty close to the square footage of style 1, just it's,
Yeah,
Well,
it's
it's
2 stories, so the square footage is more for that second floor being added. Footprint is similar, so you're 627 in option 1, 772 in option, square feet in option 2.
but that's the total square footage.
No, it's the
Footprint.
footprint.
That's the footprint.
Correct.
And all of those dimensions that you just gave us are footprints?
No, he's giving you both.
They're both. So
In option 3 then,
option 3 is the largest home,
and that total square footage is
1,394 square feet.
including the second floor?
Correct.
And in the second.
Total
op-
living space,
And in the second option,
1,250 square feet.
that's the number I was missing. Thank you.
And if you want me to go through dimensions, I can
No.
explain the
no, I-
dimensions we have, but
I think.
roughly, I
think
mean,
we
it's
have a good
22
sense.
by 28, 20 by 30, depending on which option you go with.
Yep. Thank
Other
you.
questions from board members? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Other questions from board members? Mr. Hafer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the phasing, I assume each phase would be complete, no requirements for phase 1 to need phase 3 to meet conditions, or, you know, if things change and a phase is delayed or a phase is not built, is there any concerns about, you know, we need the drainage in phase 3 to be in place to meet the.
No, what we did was each phase to build off of so phase 1 gets done first, but we have the stormwater, the water sewer, all the utilities stand alone from 2 and 3. When phase 2, once we cross this larger box culvert and come over here, likely he'll run the road and the utilities all the way, but we still have it phased where you could do the water and sewer phased for phase 2 only. So it kind of just grows from Court Street back, but it wouldn't rely, phase 1 or phase 2 would not require anything from phase 3 holding it up if that wasn't going forward.
Mayor Khan?
So next thought to want to just understand best. The Genesis Nursing Home is the T on the drawing.
Correct.
And the feet between, the frontage on the 9.7 acres is, how wide is it?
Our frontage is 300, let's see, 344? Yeah.
Okay, 344 feet
Correct.
of frontage.
Yes.
And do you know the distance between the two driveways?
This distance here, how long the spur is, or between Genesis and this here?
Yes, the driveway of Genesis to the driveway of the cottage court.
Around 255 feet.
I personally have a point of reference between my driveway and my neighbor's driveway. And so it not quite 200 feet, but anyway, that's helpful. And you said it's 250, it's 300,
Yeah, about 250 feet across,
250 feet,
255.
yeah. Okay,
How close to the neighbor's driveway, the other neighbor?
okay. I can ask that. I'm sorry that our guest can't ask that just now, but do you know what that distance is?
We don't have that driveway located because it's further than what we would have surveyed to.
It's 173 feet from
It's okay. Those are questions that we could get answers to
Yeah, so
in the
it's,
future. Yep.
we don't have all the way to where that is. It'd be over 300 feet.
300 feet.
It would be well over 300 feet past where we've surveyed.
Okay.
I
well,
would
that's-
have to
It's helpful. Thank you.
look at the tax map.
Mr. Cost?
Thank you. Similar to an earlier question, is each phase stands on its own, sounds like?
Yes.
And then does each phase meet that average cottage court amount of square feet too?
No, it's based on the total development.
Okay.
Yeah, based on the numbers Mr. Noonan gave us, the Phase 1 is going to be the lowest average square footage. And it's going to increase as Phases 2 and 3 are built.
Yeah. Building 1. I could calculate it quick for just Phase 1.
Well, it sounds like Chairman Farrington is explaining that to me, to us, that Phase 1 is below the maximum anyway of the cottage court. It's within, okay, I'm getting expert help.
Yeah, so it'd be the average gross floor area that I'd have to calculate to know if just Phase 1 met it.
And the only reason I'm asking is if, as we said, if for some reason Phase 2 or 3 doesn't happen,
Yep.
Phase 1 might not be in compliance with the cottage court?
So, Mr. Chair, may I answer, or
Yeah,
attempt
please.
to answer?
Yeah, please,
I
Madam
don't have
Chair.
exact numbers for you, but I believe Phase 3, all 6 of those buildings are proposed to be the larger. So just
Yes.
based on mathematical averages, I would assume Phase 1 and 2 at least would meet the cottage court requirements on their own, without factoring those 6 of the larger, because those 6 are all above, so everything else would have to help balance it out.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah,
That's
so
fine.
I calculated it out. So we have 2 of building 1, which is the smallest, 8 of building 2, which is the middle, and then building 2, building 3 is in Phase 1. So it comes out to 1,170 square feet gross average. It's still under the 1,250
Okay,
square
thank you.
feet. And that's the that's the highest density we have, so that one's gonna drive it.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Noonan. At this time, I would invite staff to provide their staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Megan Fortson, planner. I think that Mr. Noonan did a good job providing an overview of the project, so I'm just going to try to briefly provide you with some background, go through the staff comments that we received on the application, and then quickly go through whether or not the proposal complies with each of the necessary standards. So the parcel is located about a third of a mile to the northwest of Cheshire Medical Center. Surrounding uses include the nursing home that's located directly to the west, undeveloped land to the north and northeast, commercial offices across Court Street to the southwest, and single-family homes to the southeast. Notable features on the site include a small stream and the wetland systems that run in a north-south orientation through the parcel, and then an old woods road that's used as a walking trail that runs along the northeastern property boundary and connects to the neighborhood to the south. As Mr. Noonan says, the property has about 344 feet of frontage along Court Street, and the owner is proposing a 29-unit cottage court development consisting of single-family homes that are proposed to be constructed over the course of 3 phases. Primary access to the site is going to be from Court Street, and then there is going to be a travel aisle that is going to be constructed from the Genesis parcel using an existing easement that's already in place. Given the fact that there are more than 5 units proposed and there are also impacts within the wetlands buffer, this is both a cottage court conditional use permit, a surface water protection conditional use permit, and a major site plan application. In regards to the determination of regional impact, planning staff did not feel that there was a potential for regional impact, but please consider that as part of your deliberation. In regards to departmental comments that we received on the application, with planning staff, we had worked with the applicant back and forth to figure out what the appropriate timeline for achieving active and substantial development was going to be for each phase. The first phase is anticipated to begin this summer, so 2025. Under your regulations, active and substantial development of a completely undeveloped site like this is 2 years from the date of conditional approval. So that would give the property owner until 2027 to achieve active and substantial development for each phase. So we basically have broken the 3 phases out, saying that the first phase must achieve active and substantial development by 2027, 2029, and then 2031. And the applicant and property owner seem to be in agreement with that proposed timeframe. Code enforcement staff said that they would need a building permit. Zoning staff confirmed that the vehicular access from the Genesis parcel was allowed, given the fact that that easement has been in place for a number of years at this point. And then, as Mr. Noonan noted, engineering staff did have quite a few comments on the application when they took a second look at the updated materials that were submitted. But these are all very nitty-gritty, specific to city engineering staff comments. So both the city engineer, applicant, and property owner were comfortable with these changes being reviewed as a condition of approval, subject to review and approval by the city engineer and public works director. So the first section of standards relevant to this application come from Article 11 of the Land Development Code, and those are the surface water CUP standards. To quickly go through those, the first few sections address buffer encroachment, and they say that the proposed use cannot be located in a manner to avoid encroachment into the surface water protection overlay district, and that the project is designed to minimize impacts to the surface water buffer. Because the property is located in the low-density district, they're required to maintain a 30-foot buffer from surface waters and wetlands. So about 7 of the homes and/or their associated sheds are proposed to be located right on the edge of the 30-foot surface water buffer, and an additional 5 buildings and/or accessory structures will be located within the buffer. The applicant's narrative stated that there was going to be approximately 1,300 square feet of impact within the surface water buffer. And the proposed design for the cottages, they're grouped in 3 clusters in the upland areas of the site to minimize impacts to the buffer. And so given the proximity of some of the proposed structures to the surface water, planning staff recommend the submittal of a security to cover the cost of sediment and erosion control measures, which, as you know, is pretty ordinary practice for this board. And then we also are including a precedent condition of approval related to the flagging of the 30-foot wetlands buffer prior to the start of construction, and the inspection of that buffer by community development staff. In addition to the applicant's placement of the actual buildings on the site to reduce the encroachment into the surface water buffer, they're also proposing a number of stormwater measures and plantings and conservation seed mix is going to be used to help stabilize the site. So it appears that the intent of those standards was met. In regards to adverse impacts, the proposed the proposed private driveway is going to cross directly through the wetlands in 2 locations. And so the board is going to need to decide if the proposed development is going to comply with this standard, which states that when taken as a whole, the proposal will avoid the potential for adverse impacts to the surface water resource. Planning staff recommends that the board include a condition of approval related to the inclusion of the necessary state permits on the proposed conditions plans, just so that we can document that those permits have indeed been issued. And then there is a section related to the preservation of existing vegetation. Obviously, the applicant is proposing to clear the areas where the houses are proposed to be removed, but they are proposing to maintain a vegetated buffer around the perimeter of the site, in addition to planting some different street trees and a number of different shrubs on the property to give the appearance of it being a residential neighborhood with a street, even though it's a private driveway, as well as to screen some of the transformers and other mechanical equipment that are going to be installed throughout the site. So staff felt that that standard was met, but the board is obviously going to have to make the final determination as to whether or not maintaining that existing vegetation and then the installation of the proposed new landscaping meets the intent of that standard. And then the last thing, there's a long list of additional considerations that the board can use when reviewing these types of proposals. Under this section of the staff report, I really sort of deferred to what the Conservation Commission had said. They have now met 2 different times to discuss this project. The first was in November of 2024, and they did a site visit of the property. And the general consensus, based on the notes, or minutes, I should say, seemed to be that they appreciated the fact that the applicant and property owner were trying to minimize the impacts in the individual locations of each impact versus, as Mr. Noonan said, just requesting a, blanket reduction in the size of the surface water buffer. And as he stated, they also just recommended that the applicant be very careful when it comes to designing the stormwater measures. Mary, did you have anything that you wanted to add from the meeting that they had last week?
Yes, thank you. So Mary Brenner, Senior Planner, the Conservation Commission met last week to review this application as a formal referral from the Planning Board. And they did have a really great discussion. They asked a lot of great questions. Everyone on the board was very supportive of this project. And they did end up making a motion. And so I'm just going to read this from the draft minutes. Mr. Von Plinsky made the following motion, which was duly seconded by Ms. Richter. On a vote of 7-0, the Conservation Commission recommends the Planning Board approve this application with the following recommendation. 1, riparian plantings that will support a wide range of native pollinators, such as Joe Pyeweed and milkweed. So that is the only recommendation that they had.
Thank you. And then the next section of standards applicable to this application comes from Article 17. Those are the actual cottage court CUP standards. So the first section dictates what development types are allowed. These are obviously proposed to be a series of single-family homes that are going to be condoized and managed by a homeowners association. So that standard appears to be met. There's also specific dimensional requirements that are required for both cottage court developments within the low-density district and then what's proposed as part of this application. On page 40 of your packet, you can take a look at all of the specific dimensional requirements, but the proposal is going to meet the setbacks required in low density, which is a 15-foot front setback, 20-foot rear setback, and then 10-foot side setbacks. So it's going to comply with all of those. It's going to have a 2-story height, which is going to be the max per unit. Maximum per unit, which is you're allowed up to 2.5 stories or 35 feet in low density. So that standard appears to be met. Just to clarify the dwelling unit size a little bit, so as Mr. Noonan stated, the 3 different types of units are going to range in size from 627 square feet of gross floor area for type 1. Type 2 is going to be 1,250 square feet exactly, and then the third unit is going to be 1,394 square feet. So that means that the maximum average gross floor area of the units is 1,164 square feet, which complies with the necessary gross floor requirement. And then the maximum building footprint is going to be 852 square feet, which is below the 900 square foot footprint maximum. So both of those standards are met. That calculation does not include any unfinished areas, like porches, sheds, garages. Those don't contribute towards that value. For parking, say it with me now, you can have a maximum of 1 per bedroom or 1 per unit. So they could, as part of this proposal, have a minimum of 29 spaces, and a maximum of 81 spaces, just based on the minimum number of units and then the total number of bedrooms that are going to be constructed as part of the development based on the different building types. The applicant is proposing to offer a total of 58 parking spaces, and that's going to be both through the driveways that are going to be created for each individual unit, as well as those units that are going to have garages, which I think the chair had stated there are going to be 9 of those. So that standard appears to be met. Code enforcement staff had no concerns in terms of the building separation. For the driveways, they are proposing a driveway with two-way traffic at a 20-foot width, which complies with the standard of between 20 to 24 feet wide. So that standard is met. There are no internal roads proposed. And then the screening standard isn't applicable to this application just because this proposed use is not more intense than the surrounding uses. But again, the applicant is still proposing to install those trees, install the fence at the entrance, and then keep the vegetated buffer in place around most of the site. And then in terms of architectural guidelines, which I don't think were really addressed, this section of the code basically says that these types of developments should endeavor to fit in or be respectful of the context of the surrounding neighborhood. So the project narrative states that the buildings will be finished with natural tones that will fit in with the nearby neighborhoods in the city and will complement one another well. In addition, the proposed building styles align with the recommended urban design and architectural principles listed in this section of the code. So this basically says that buildings should be narrow to the frontage. They should have a base that's differentiated from the rest of the building. There should be some sort of structural expression, simple, clear massing, and natural and integral materials. So we felt that that standard appeared to be met. The last section of standards that are applicable is from Article 21, which is your site development standards. In terms of drainage, to go through this quickly, the applicant is proposing a mixture of catch basins, infiltration trenches with treatment swales, a box culvert, and gravel wetland ponds on the site as the permanent drainage measures. The city engineer, during his review of the application, other than having those very specific comments related to the design of the utilities, he didn't have any concerns about the proposed stormwater runoff. Given the fact that the application is going to require both an alteration of terrain permit and a wetlands permit from DES. Again, we recommend that those numbers be added to the plans, but otherwise that standard appears to be met. In terms of sediment and erosion control, in addition to the permanent drainage and stormwater management measures that I had mentioned, the applicant is also proposing to install temporary silt fencing, silt socks in the catch basins, and a stabilized construction entrance from Court Street. We recommend that a condition of approval related to the inspection of these erosion control measures be included in the motion. Otherwise, the standard appears to be met. To quickly go through landscaping, the applicant proposes 12 red maple trees to be installed along either side of the drive aisle as street trees. And then they're also proposing a mixture of shrubs, including rhododendrons, junipers, and holly bushes. And those will serve also not only as additional landscaping, but also as screening for the transformers that are going to be installed on the site. So as per normal procedure, we recommend the submittal of a security to cover the cost of that landscaping, as well as initial and final landscaping inspections. In relation to screening, the site is going to obviously be screened from adjacent properties and from the public right-of-way by the existing wooded buffer. Trash removal is going to be handled independently by each condo owner, so there's not going to be a dumpster that needs to be screened or anything like that. And then mechanical equipment, the applicant is proposing to install that at the rear of the building, so it's not going to be visible from any public right-of-way. So that standard appears to be met. The proposed light fixtures met all of the necessary requirements in terms of being full cutoff and having a color temperature of 3,500 Kelvin or less. So those standards have been met. Again, the waiver that was originally submitted to allow for light trespass levels above 0.1 foot candles at the property line is no longer necessary, given the fact that the photometric plan was updated. So just keep that in mind. And then obviously, there are still discussions going on related to the sewer and water utilities that are going to need to be constructed as part of this project. To sort of cover any potential ownership, what we're recommending is that you include a sort of two conditions of approval. One related to the submittal of any draft documentation related to easements and any other necessary legal instruments. We would request that those be submitted to our office for review by the city attorney. And then the second one is just submittal of copies of those recorded documents following the final approval of the application. And then to go through the last two standards, traffic and access management, the applicant had submitted a traffic memo prepared by a traffic engineer using historical data from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. And the memo estimates that the 29-unit development will result in approximately 24 vehicle trips during the weekday morning peak hour, 31 during the weekday evening peak hour, and 35 trips during the Saturday midday peak hour, with the result being that the vehicular trips associated with the development would have negligible impacts on the adjacent roadway system. So that standard appears to be met. And then the last standard that I wanted to touch on was filling and excavation, just because the project narrative does state that they anticipate over 50 truckloads of material brought into or from the site during the course of construction. In terms of a truck route, the applicant is proposing that trucks would travel along Court Street to Maple Ave and then on to New Hampshire Route 12, which city staff had no concerns over. I'm going to quickly go through the recommended motion. For the conditions precedent that would need to be met prior to final approval, it would be owner's signature, the submittal of paper copies and digital copies of the final plan set, including the renderings, the submittal of an updated plan that addresses all outstanding comments from the city engineer and shows the proposed name for the private driveway, which we recommend be reviewed and approved by the city engineer. And then submittal of a security for sediment and erosion control measures, landscaping, and as-built plans, the submittal of draft written documentation of the required utility easements and any other necessary legal instruments, the approved permit numbers for the shoreline protection, alteration of terrain, and wetlands permits, as well as any other required state permits. And then for the conditions subsequent to final approval, it's that the applicant shall have 2 years to achieve active and substantial development following the timeframes that I specified earlier, so May 1st of 2027, 2029, and 2031. And then prior to the commencement of site work, we recommend that the Community Development Department be notified once erosion and sediment control measures have been installed and inspect those, and then the flagging and inspection of the 30-foot surface water buffer. And then the other conditions we recommend subsequent to final approval would be the submittal of the recorded utility easements, obtaining final acceptance of the new utilities from Keene City Council if they are to be owned as municipal infrastructure, and then the completion of initial and final landscaping inspections. I know that was a lot, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mayor Khan, yeah.
Thank you,
no,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were.
So one thing that I remember from the initial presentation and just had a little difficulty understanding then, but it has to do with the relationship of the driveway on the Genesis site as a right-of-way, and so maybe you could explain that, because there's going to be the additional driveway that is also going to be accessible during construction. So, right? It's the relationship of those two driveways that I just want to understand at different phases of the project.
Yeah, so that might actually be a very good question for Mr. Noonan to answer. My understanding is that the construction entrance is proposed to just be from Court Street, but obviously the homes that are on the, what is it gonna be, the southwestern portion of the parcel are proposed to be constructed as part of Phase 1. So the main construction entrance, I believe, is going to be from Court Street. I don't believe that there is any intent for vehicles to be traveling through the Genesis site onto the subject parcel as part of Phase 1 or any of the phases of construction. It should just be from Court Street.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Noonan, you can elaborate.
Yeah, so Megan's understanding is correct. So as we showed on the plan, we have a construction entrance directly on the main driveway coming off of Court Street. So that's where all the construction equipment would enter and leave the site. We do have, for phase one, it does connect over to this area. However, we're not going to loop construction and equipment and everything through this way. It would all be off Court Street where we show a construction entrance.
So what is the purpose of the connection? That's what I never got.
Yeah, just to provide an extra connection point where some of these houses might want to exit here and not all go to one exit point. Mr. Guittard at one point had discussed, maybe putting bollards or removable bollards there to not have through traffic. We recommended to him to just leave it open and allow people to choose which one they want to utilize, just to kind of split traffic between the two, give a second means of egress off the site.
So in short, the Genesis right-of-way is not going to be used for construction traffic, but residents during construction would have access to that right-of-way.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions for staff? I have a procedural question. So, in our package, it said that the waiver for light trespass was required. Are we just going to say do we need to do anything?
No, you don't need to do anything. In the minutes, it will be reflected that both the applicant and myself have clarified that the waiver wasn't necessary, so, and that was clarified in the staff report, so you should be all set.
Okay. And my second question is the surface water protection, CUP. Do we need a vote separately on that, or is it part of the major site plan?
So these are all three application types are being considered as part of one application, so the motion is going to be for everything.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to invite very patient members of the public who have waited to say their piece. But before we start with that, may I just see a show of hands of folks who want to comment on this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. Don't see any hands on that side. Okay, so I'll let you guys choose who goes first.
I'm a little disappointed because in the plan and the.
Excuse me.
young-
Hold on.
Excuse me.
If you want to speak, you have to come forward, state your name and address,
Sure.
and then you can have your comments or questions.
My name is Jeff Gowan. I live at 15A Windsor Court, which is the right estate. I'm a little disappointed in the plan that was presented in the young lady's presentation because there's an 89-unit condo association just west of the proposed cottage court situation that never was mentioned. It's not on the map, and I just, it impact. I know, I call this the Florida Panhandle, and at the end of the Panhandle, I'd like to know where the first right estate building is, if somebody could show me. And second of all, are the utilities, are they gonna be buried, or are they gonna be above ground? I mean, the electric utilities?
They'll be buried.
And in other HOA situations that the developer has done, are there landscape conditions that your HOAs has imposed?
Yes, so. So the houses on the right estate are off of, they're not in close proximity to this lot line where we surveyed, so we don't have, I can't tell the exact
You
location of
can't
that
tell the
building.
difference from this home to where the first building of the right estate is?
We don't have those buildings located. They were far enough off the property, so we typically go about 100 feet past the property line to survey, so we haven't surveyed over into this kind of.
Does the property go up to this line here?
Yes, this is the property line here. Yep.
Are they surveyed?
So right estates is here.
Right, 15 is right here.
Yep.
And probably the building most impacted, okay. So, can you give me what the distance, what is the buffer of trees from this property line to the first building?
Yes. About 125 feet.
Good. So that means it's above where the brook comes in?
So
and where this lane is?
Right, so that brook or the wetland stream area is this. So it's in the middle of this green area.
Okay.
So in between, this is the extents of that wetland resource.
Yep.
So the water goes basically right in the middle of all this down this way. So these are uphill of where that wetland complex comes in. Yep.
And one other thing, isn't this already a city-named street? Isn't this Allen Court Extension? And what you propose it to name it some other path or something?
No, so Allen Court is a private way, easement that does come through here. That remains, and we're not touching that.
Okay.
When you look up the local trail system, they call it root way, as in like tree root. It's called the root
The route,
trail.
and it comes out on East Surrey Road?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's good.
And then utilities, I had said when I was sitting, but utilities are all buried, they're below ground.
And one other question. You think construction-wise, you're gonna stop, building your road in this first increment? You're not gonna build the whole road at once?
No, so he's gonna build, coming off of here, so all the construction entrances will be to here. Basically, everything in this is phase one, so they would build these homes and the road to here, with the utilities to here. The next phase would be building this wetland crossing box culvert and extending the utilities to phase two.
So when you get in there logging and cutting, you're only gonna cut to here?
He's
not
likely
gonna cut
gonna,
the whole
he'll
thing?
likely cut the whole thing,
That's
yeah,
what I was
yeah.
thinking,
Yeah, they're gonna.
And is this road gonna be paved?
Yes, sir.
And all
20-foot wide
All
paved.
these driveways paved?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor Khan?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to clarify that we all understood the same thing, that the distance of the northmost improvement on this property is, in your estimation, 125 feet from abutters to the north.
Yeah, that's correct. So the closest location right here on the end to the property line between our subject lot and the right estate is 125 feet to our proposed tree line to to that shared property line.
So
So,
they'll see the houses, each other?
That's right.
They're the bigger.
Those are the biggest houses.
Yeah, hold on. It's not fair to the minute taker to have people speaking out from the audience.
Then I'll get back up. And what's the lighting situation here at this end? From here, this third phase?
Yeah, so these symbols here are the lights. So there's a light here for the turnaround for emergency vehicles. There's one light there, all the way down here, here. So there's not a tremendous amount of lights, but, yeah.
So this is what you're calling the turnaround?
Yeah, so this is called a hammerhead turnaround.
Yeah.
So this is long enough, so we made this long enough based on the fire chief saying what he wanted for distance, so we made this a little bit longer and this longer. So emergency vehicle, whether it's fire truck or an ambulance can come in here, turn around, get out, and there's a fire hydrant on this end.
Okay. Now, this is the stone wall above this lane. Who is this owner?
Yes. Ranger Curran Jr.
Okay. Okay. Great, thank you.
Yes.
Next.
My name is Jean LaValle. I live at 15K Windsor Court at the Wright Estates. I haven't heard anything about your fire protection plan. You said it's 29 houses and 9.7 acres. What is your fire safety plan? How many fire hydrants are you gonna have?
Yeah, I'll just-
Because you're on the edge of a forest, back up to a forest, you know. We're surrounded by forest. So I'm
Correct.
just wondering what your fire safety plan is.
Yeah, so
I mean, if I buy a unit, I don't want it burning down. I want to know what your plan is to save my house.
Yeah, so there's currently existing hydrants located at the intersection right before the Genesis lot, a hydrant here, and a hydrant at the end closest to the building. There is also a hydrant out here in the wetland. The fire chief said he's not sure if this one functions. So at his direction, we've added 2 additional fire hydrants. So there's a fire hydrant in phase 1, phase 2, and then phase 3. So, sorry. Phase 2 has the first hydrant. This hydrant here that we're connecting to basically serves for all of the phase 1. The hydrant that's at the cul-de-sac serves for phase 2, and then the third one at the hammerhead will be for phase 3. So there's additional, we're extending an 8-inch water main and then 6-inch water lines to the fire hydrants per the fire chief's review.
Okay, and what about the individual cottages? What's their fire safety plan?
So they're not required to be sprinklered as residential home.
Right, but are those cottages going to be connected to the downtown fire department if there's
Excuse me a
fire?
second.
Yes.
Or-
Excuse me a second. May I just ask you to speak into the microphone?
Oh, I'm
Again,
sorry.
we do have someone who's off-site taking the minutes.
Oh, okay. So the people in the cottages, how are they going to protect their cottage for this fire safety plan?
Right, so all of these fall within the municipal 911 district, so they'll get a 911 address specific to each residence, and they'd rely on the municipal fire department.
So if there's a fire
And
in
there's
my,
additional
so if there's a
hydrants.
fire in my cottage, I'll be able to be connected directly to the fire department?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Lisa Perkins. I live at 649 Court Street, which is the direct abutter to the right and shares the longest line, with the exception of Genesis, with the proposal. I do have some very specific questions, mostly around the water conservation in these areas here, which directly abut my.
Yeah, again, I just ask you to just carry the mic, go with you.
Okay. So, yes, so these things kind of look like racetracks to bring it right into my already wet backyard that I've already done a lot of mitigation myself on to not have a pool in my backyard. And then there's infiltration trenches on 2 right on the edge of my property. That's to me the biggest question. The box culvert also is, this is all draining through my property? And is there an easement related to that?
So, to show more detail on this here, to answer your question, the 2 blue areas that you were pointing to up here, these are existing wetlands. So even if this was not constructed, those blue outlined areas are what exists for wetlands. So the water comes down the steep hill and is trapped on the one side of the trail. It bleeds through the ground and then it forms this other wetland. And then it also goes through a collapsed like stone box culvert over here
I'm
that
very
creates
familiar
this
with that.
little channel here. The entire site drains from up past the right estates. I mean, it actually drains up from Goose Pond all the way down.
All Rangers
And it's-
stuff.
Yep, and it's going all the way down through your property. There's then a 4-foot box culvert that's under Court Street. So this is where that grade on your property drops really steep down, and it drops about 20 feet in grade, and then goes in that box culvert under Court Street and ultimately to the Ishwelot River. So those pocket areas are the existing wetlands. So then in our proposed drainage, what we're doing is we're capturing, so these are at a blown up scale. So Court Street is on the right hand side of the
And
page
there's my
here.
property
Your
up there.
property is at the top of the page, correct? So phase 1 ends up into a gravel wetland that basically holds back and retains the water and treats the water before it ultimately goes into the wetland complex that goes down, so that doesn't change direction of where it goes. The portion that you're concerned about here, we're actually capturing with a swale, so if anything overtopped on this, it would come into this swale, be directed around. This is a infiltration basin plus a spillway, like a level spreader. So if it overtopped that, it goes down and then into another infiltration basin. So this is allowing the water to sit in this and soak into the ground,
So I'll have more mosquitoes.
and then it ultimately comes out into here. So the infiltration basins don't hold water long enough that you end up with mosquitoes. You would have that much more from the existing wetlands than an infiltration basin. So we're infiltrating where there's better sandy soils down towards the front of the property. Everything on the other sides are more of a wetland pond.
And again, with the easement, do you need an easement to be able to?
No, so this is a natural waterway. We're not changing anything to it, and
But you're changing everything in it.
right, so our stormwater designed to make these ponds and swales and everything, we submit a stormwater report that's reviewed by the city engineer and the state to show that we're not increasing the amount of water to that drainage way.
And at what level are you
So we-
building that?
Yeah, so we have to design to a 2-year, a 10-year, 25-year for the
Because
city,
I shared a
50-year.
video from a 10-year, because it was 4 inches in a day, that I shared with Megan with the water that came down through that. And I'm
Yep.
very concerned with everything that's going to change in here. How is that going to affect
Yeah,
my
so-
property, the erosion on my property?
Right, so,
Up at this level, because I believe there's going to be a lot more coming down there as well as through my,
so nothing from this site would increase over on your side. Our design is up to a 50-year for the state. The wetlands require a 100-year for the crossing, so the box culverts that are here, those are designed to a 100-year storm. They have to be able to free pass a
but my
100-year
cully
storm.
isn't.
What's that?
My property isn't designed for that.
Right, but we have to design ours that we don't increase the amount of water through that wetland complex.
Okay.
So we're taking it as, our model is, nothing's on this and it's all forested, and that determines a number of, that's the existing condition. Then we're designing, with all of this being paved and grass lawns and less trees and a paved road, we have to offset that, and that's what designs your stormwater to hold it back and lower the numbers so that you end up matching or being under what the existing condition is.
Okay, I have my own questions that I have to ask other people related to that. Another thing I'd like to put is the impacts that were mentioned today has been on the 9.7 acres and not anybody else surrounding it. I work from home. I am going to be directly impacted by stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 will move a little further away from me. My office is on this side, if you want to flip back to the one that shows it, the full. Because this is my property, this is my garage, my house is about here. It's 80 feet from the fence line, from that property line. I conduct business out of this office, and I'm on phone calls 4 to 6 hours a day. I work with clients all over the country. This is going to devastatingly impact my ability to work from my home, which I've done for 15 years. You've removed the fencing and said it's going to be okay with the trees there. There's hardly any trees up this part. This is all scrub at best. It's mostly overgrown grapes from people that lived there a long time ago that I'm still trying to get rid of. But I don't understand why. I can understand you're not going to do fencing around here, but that is a direct impact. I'm going to be watching these people right out my back door. Every time I go up my driveway, I'm going to see these people in their backyard. I put a fence along my other side because I didn't want to look at my neighbors when they're out having a barbecue and out having a fire. And now I'm going to have that on this side. So I'm respectfully going to say, I think the 6 foot that is generally noted for these types of things, but was saying that there's enough coverage there, I don't feel there is. And if you want to come visit me at my property, I'm happy to show you. Those are two of the major issues. But the noise, this is going to impact me for 6 years. So when you take this into account, don't just look at the impact of within that 9.7, look at it outside of it as well. Because my property value is pretty much gone. I had a great 2.2 acres. It was private. It was like not living in the middle of Keene. And now I would be directly in the middle of Keene. But more than that, I am going to be inundated with noise and light and everything for, well, as long as I live there. But my value is going to tank. I thank you respectfully.
Thank you. Other folks? Please come forward, yeah.
Does this work?
Yes, that one's on as well.
I'm Paula Fleming. I live at 15B Windsor Court. And when Mr. Noonan was speaking, he said that there would be the buffer of trees, but he said select, you used the word select. And I don't know what that really means. Are you going to select some trees to cut? And if so, what's the percentage of trees that are going to be left? I mean, that's what we have to hope for, is that buffer of trees because of where we are.
Yes, so when I was saying selective is the impact to the buffer. So there's a buffer around the wetland that's required for 30 feet. With the cottage court, you can ask for a reduced buffer down to 10 feet. Instead of asking for the 10 feet all the way across, is we impacted just small areas, trying to not impact into the entire buffer. So many areas the buffer is not impacted. As for trees, I don't know what the percentage is. We show where our proposed tree line is, so this would be the outer cut of what's needed in order to build the site, grade it out, and do stormwater mitigation and grading. So these trees remain here along the property line, as Ms. Perkins had pointed out, between her and the site here. Kind of comes up into the wetland. We have the crossing, so that impacts that, comes up along the site here. So this is our outline of trees. So anything on this side would be remaining. Obviously in the development area, that's what's removed.
But you're going to remove a lot of those trees, right?
Yes, anything within the limit of this outer line here, the trees are removed, and then homes, roads, constructed driveways, and then they're planting trees along the roadway.
Yeah, it seems like we need the trees to contain the water too.
Well, our stormwater, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
is based on this amount of trees being cut, this amount of houses being built, and this amount of pavement being constructed.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
I had one more question.
Hold on, there's another gentleman who hasn't spoken yet.
go ahead.
Let's hear from him first.
So I'm Todd Rogers, live in Keene. Todd Rogers, I live in Keene. So I wonder if you could clarify, you said the drainage and the septic were going to be plastic and passed on to the HOA instead of steel piping? So like the sewer lines, basically, everything back there will be up to the homeowners to pay if something breaks all the way down to Court Street?
So as of right now, that's what's in question is, so sewer for septage is always plastic, so that's gonna be plastic.
Yep.
The one in question is the water line. So water line for City of Keene to own it has to be ductile iron, a steel pipe. The cost of steel is going up, as many people are aware. If it's cost prohibitive to be able to even construct it with steel, then we would opt for 8-inch, keeping the size of the line the same, and doing plastic pipe. So it depends on the community if we're allowed to use plastic versus ductile iron. So that's where we've met with the city engineer. Mr. Guittard has gotten pricing initially on ductile iron versus plastic. If it's gonna be plastic to keep the cost down, that then means the HOA owns it.
Right.
If he can get ductile iron and it's still feasible cost-wise, then the city owns it. And there'd be an easement that there's a break in a water main or a
Right.
feed at midnight, the city comes out, digs it up and fixes it, versus the HOA having to call a private contractor to come and fix it if they own it. So ultimately, Mr. Guitard wants to go with the city owning the infrastructure. It just, if it's cost prohibitive, but based on what happens between now and the start of construction on costs, on construction material for that water line, that's what's gonna determine that.
Right, so unfortunately, what that means, you're just gonna pass the cost off. It's too expensive for you to build it. You would just pass it off to everybody that owns it after. What you're basically saying, it's super expensive. If it is, you can't do it, but we'll just pass it down the line.
Right, so it's a weighing of that cost of, water lines can go 75 years without breaking, or they could go a week with, and
No,
break, right?
I mean,
So
I get it. It just seems as if,
there's a cost that they pay
Should
to
be
the city
informed.
either way. So if you owned one of these homes, you're paying a water sewer fee to Keene, regardless if you own that water line or not. If it breaks, your HOA, everyone in this
Right.
would have to split the cost to repair it.
right,
So it really comes down
plowing,
to the
road
breaking.
maintenance, everything.
Well, the maintenance is ultimately, is all, so
H-
stormwater, plowing, snow, maintenance, that's 100% on the HOA, that is not part of the city
Yep.
plowing or any of that. Either way, that's the case.
Right.
It's coming down to the water line.
Excellent. Well, I
For
just
water
hope that it can be steel so that it's not passed on to the homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Gowan. Jeff Gowan again. I understand the 3 stages of the building. That makes total sense. What I don't understand, and I like answered, is the sequencing of the building. Now, if Mr. Guitard gets there, he gets this first thing, and is he building all these houses on spec, or is he building these houses when he gets a buyer? Is it possible that all these houses could be built and they all are owned by Mr. Guitard and he rents them all? That's my question.
So I'll let Mike expand on this and on how he wants to do it, but Mike actually builds the houses himself.
Yes.
So he's gonna be building a house one at a time and selling them, is ultimately the plan.
But
He might be able to do up to 3 houses at a time or 5, but
sure,
he's
yeah.
selling them. So just to give you an idea, even just posting the sign for this meeting, he's already gotten calls on people wanting to get on a waiting list for these homes because they're gonna be smaller and they're gonna be affordable.
I'm sure there'll be a
So
demand, but I was
there's
just
demand
wondering.
now, yeah.
I was just wondering, in the past, your experience, how many do you rent? I mean, do you build and do you rent?
I don't really rent any homes that
Okay.
I built. I will reserve the right to rent because of market conditions, but I will have language in the HOA that states, like, I don't wanna sell it to somebody who comes in and buys 5 and they use it as a rental investment. I would prefer it to be home ownership to individual people to provide housing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Please.
Mr. Chair, can I, just for the record, because I don't believe that was captured in the recording, I believe the owner was just saying that, is that okay if I
Yeah, please.
just try to
Thank you.
paraphrase? That his intent is to sell all of the units and that his plan is to put language into the HOA documents so that a buyer couldn't buy up a bunch of the units and then turn around and rent them out. But he does reserve his right to be able to rent them out himself. But his plan is to sell them as condos.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, please.
My name is Craig Charles, 22 Evergreen, Keene. Excuse me. I'm a teacher. I'm just curious what school district this building would raise possible enrollments in. Would it be Fuller School? Would it be Fuller? Because I think currently Evergreen Avenue is the boundary, I think, for Fuller. So that's not our decision.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
Also, I'd like to ask a question about street lighting. Are these street lights, or I'm confused by the?
I'm just gonna flip to our lighting plan so you can see right there. So these symbols right here
Mhm.
are the lights. So we basically tried to target main intersection points and safety areas, so the end of the road, around the cul-de-sac, intersection, and intersection. So these are the street lights, and then these round circles here are this type of light that would be mounted on the homes.
Okay.
Yep. So we.
So it's not
minimize
like
the
a-
amount-
okay.
We minimize light as much as possible.
It's not heavily density with lights.
No,
Okay.
no.
And just clarification again, the waiver you were requesting for light trespass, you're now.
Yeah, so what we did was
excluding
we
it.
revised
Okay.
our layout so that we're not over the property. So before,
Okay.
we had this light closer to the intersection to light more of the driveway Genesis.
Mhm.
But in order to just eliminate the waiver, we moved the light inward and so it doesn't trespass onto the Genesis driveway.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yep, please come forward.
I'm Bud Shaw. I live at 712 Court Street. I just had a couple of questions. I think the state's, am I getting through? I think the state's estimate of traffic impact is not on target. I think you're going to have a lot more traffic than you think. Obviously, phase one won't bother it too bad because there won't be too many people, but as I see, most of our families now are both members of the family working. They each have a car, and God forbid they have a teenager who's just got to have a car. So the number of cars goes up, and the traffic up and down the road, which is bad now, gets worse. The other question that I have, and I'm sure you can tell me this, how much power is each one of those units going to consume? I mean, obviously, it's an individual thing, but what are we putting in for capacity?
Yeah, so Mr. Guitard's working with Eversource, but each house would have a minimum of 100 amp panel. Some might want to have a 200 amp panel. And we're feeding off of Court Street, coming in transformer for phase one, transformer for phase 2 and 3 together. And then if Eversource decides to split and do two, they'd rather do 2 transformers down there, it might be that, but we've shown transformer locations based on initial feedback that that the applicant's gotten.
I was just wondering what the capacity of those transformers were. How many 100 kilowatts?
Yeah, so that'll be based on Eversource sizing everything.
Okay. I love to listen to them at the meetings over in Concord where they're telling us that they can't supply and they can't do this and they can't do that. They can't do that. They haven't got enough power. Just trying to get a feel. And those of us who live in that area might be suffering brownouts. Anyway, that's Eversource's problem, if they agree to it. Thank you very much.
And I would refer you to the planning board website, which has the agenda packet, and there is a traffic study by Beta Company on pages 70 to 73. It's a 4-page summary of their analysis of the existing traffic in the area as well as the projected. Other questions? Okay. At this time, I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Noonan, and we're going to proceed to our deliberation. Before we do that, I'm going to request a motion. Ms. Mastrogiovanni, yeah, you're gonna have, yeah, that's the way it is. That's why you get the big dollars.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I would move to approve PB-2025-06 as shown on the plan set identified as Guittard Homes Cottage Court, prepared by Fieldstone Land Consultants, PLLC, at varying scales on March 21st, 2025, and last revised on April 14th, 2025, with the following conditions. Number one, prior to final approval and signature of the plans by the planning board chair, the following conditions shall be met. A, owner's signature appears on the title page, condo site plan and master site plan. B, submittal of 5 full-size paper copies and a digital copy of the final plan set, including renderings. C, submittal of an updated plan set that addresses all outstanding comments from the city engineer and shows the proposed name for the private driveway, which shall be subject to review and approval by the city engineer. D, submittal of a security in a form and amount acceptable to the community development director to cover the cost of landscaping, sediment and erosion control measures, and as-built plans. E, submittal of draft written documentation of the required utility easements and any other necessary legal instruments required for this application, which shall be subject to review by the city attorney. F, the approved permit numbers for the shoreland protection, alteration of terrain and wetlands permits, as well as any other required state permits, shall be added to the proposed condition plan on sheet MP1 of the plan set. And 2, subsequent to final approval and signature of the final plans by the planning board chair, the following conditions shall be met. A, the applicant shall have 2 years to achieve active and substantial development for each project phase as follows. A, Phase 1, May 1st, 2027. B, Phase 2, by May 1st, 2029. And C, Phase 3, by May 1st, 2031. And B, prior to the commencement of site work, the following conditions shall be met. A, the Community Development Department shall be notified when all erosion control measures have been installed, and community development staff shall inspect the erosion control measures to ensure compliance with the approved plans and all City of Keene regulations. And B, the 30-foot surface water buffer shall be flagged by a surveyor licensed in the state of New Hampshire and inspected by community development staff. C, submittal of recorded utility easements and any other legal instruments necessary for this application to the Community Development Department. D, the applicant shall obtain final acceptance of the new utilities from the Keene City Council following the completion of all infrastructure construction. E, following the initial installation of plantings, the Community Development Department shall be contacted to perform an initial landscaping inspection to ensure compliance with the approved landscaping plan and all City of Keene regulations. And F, 1 year after the installation of landscaping, the Community Development Department should be contacted to perform a final landscaping inspection to ensure that all plantings are in good health.
Thank you. I ask for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Khan. All right. At this point, I will entertain comments, questions regarding the motion. Mayor Khan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 2 things that I guess I wanted to get some clarification on. One is I wanted to understand further the intent of the HOA, and while it's not a condition of this approval, I think that the hope is that this development is providing owner-occupied housing. And I guess I'd just like to hear that intent, not from myself, but from somebody on the development side to hear that that's an intent.
You, Mr. Chair, would you like me to answer that question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my understanding is that, yes, the intent is for these to be owner occupied, and so the owner's intent is to sell these as condos. And then the homeowners association is a requirement of the city, because anytime you have land that's in common ownership, there needs to be an entity to take care of the shared infrastructure. So like the driveway maintenance and things like that would be under the HOA's purview. And so the only reason that we ask for the draft legal documents for our city attorney to review is just to make sure that there's the appropriate, items in the HOA agreement to make sure that that will in fact happen and won't end up falling on the city. Does that answer your
Right.
question?
I think I understand the city's interest in this is that an HOA will take responsibility for those maintenance features of the development overall. But I guess I'll just say what I said.
You probably couldn't hear him, but Mr. Guitar did respond.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah, he responded in the affirmative to that when one of the public members asked.
Unless the chair opens it.
Do
Sorry.
you want me to answer?
I think it would make the mayor feel happy. And that's what we're all about
Hi,
here.
Mike Guittard. Yeah, the intent is to sell all the homes and have it be private ownership. I would, speaking with the lawyer who would draw up the documents, I wanted to put in there, I don't want a big organization to come in, buy 12 units and rent them out. So that the language will be in there so that it's private home ownership. Obviously, if I built one and we had a market crash, I'd like to retain the right to rent it out, those kind of things.
Understood. I think some HOAs in our community have the condition that it needs to be owner occupied and any leasing must be for a year. And I'm not defining what your terms ought to be. I just think that your intent is what's important, and I'm sure that you can follow through with that intent through your homeowner's agreement.
Absolutely. Yep.
Great. I had one other question.
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
So the abutter to the south asked about noise, and I guess I just wanted to understand what is the condition that interchange was also hard to understand, just volume-wise, but and maybe content-wise, but I want to understand what kind of condition is the developer intending to have in place during construction, post-construction, to attenuate to the noise or visual concerns that were raised.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't answer this directly, but the city does have a noise ordinance. So in general, I want to say it's 7 a.m. You can't start construction activities before 7 a.m. or continue them past, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess 9 p.m. We have an ordinance that specifies the time frame. As far as what the applicant has proposed, I believe their proposal is to keep that existing tree buffer in place. The planning board could certainly ask for like a stretch of fencing or something like that if you felt that was appropriate. But I would encourage you to open up the public hearing portion of the meeting again to hear from the applicant if you wanted to request changes to the site plan.
Thank you.
So just to understand, Mary, that there is no fencing along that is proposed currently?
I'd like to say that
And so it's just the existing tree buffer.
That is correct, and I believe the portion of the tree buffer to remain is really like it's the thinnest on that side that the abutter was concerned. So again, if the board felt that that was something that should be addressed, something that you could consider, which is something that's brought up in the cottage court ordinance, is I believe it's a 6-foot tall fence for screening. So that could be something that you could request or require of the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, that was just something that I don't know that that's a condition that ought to be there. That we haven't discussed it was my concern.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll ask Mr. Noonan to come back and see his thoughts and flexibility in this regard to screening.
Yeah, so the tree line that we have shown here is, following this property line. It kind of comes in and out along the line. So where the garage is the thinnest. So it's trees that are in this area that would remain. We're not proposing a fence in that area. When it comes to the noise during construction, where he's building them one at a time and building them himself, it's not like they're building all the houses at once. You are gonna have construction noise, but I mean, it's reduced in the fact that it's a smaller outfit building one home at a time. Post-construction, once the homes are there, it's not gonna be any different from any residential neighborhood. You're gonna have kids riding bikes and playing in the backyard and vehicles or whatever you might hear, but no different than the existing development that's here. We've tried to maintain as much as we can for trees and buffer where we can, but to fit this density, this is the plan we have, and we're not proposing, reducing more of the yards in order to have more tree cover there.
Okay, thanks.
I would love to be able to point out in the conditional use permit standards in section 3.
Yeah, no one can hear you, and so I'll reopen the public hearing for you to come forward and make additional comments if you would like.
I would appreciate
Yeah, so come on up, please.
that. So in the Article 17 Cottage Court Cup analysis, again, this is Lisa Perkins at 649 Court Street. Under the conditional use permit standards, section 3, part F, under screening, the standard states that 6-foot tall opaque or semi-opaque fence is required if building type is proposed in a more intense than the adjacent building type. Given that the subject parcel is surrounded by commercial uses to the north and west, vacant land to the east, and single-family homes to the south, no screening is required. I don't understand, because this is a home, and you're completely changing what I had there before, which was
So
just woods.
You're reading from the staff report there?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll let Ms. Fortson address that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Megan Fortson, planner. I just want to address the intent behind the standard, which is really that if this were to be constructing, say, a 5-unit apartment building that was going to be a single building versus multiple small buildings, it's really about the scale of construction, not the number of units. So when we say intensity, we're talking about large building, large number of units as part of one building. Whereas this development is going to be located somewhat next to existing single-family homes. Therefore, the scale of the proposed development, being those individual units, is not different in intensity than what is there architecturally. Not traffic or anything like that, but architecturally, visually, it will appear to be a neighborhood. I hope that provides clarification.
Thank you.
And I could say 29 units is pretty on scale, and
You gotta use the mic.
being more intense than the adjacent building type, there isn't a building type there, so, and again, I conduct business from my home. This is going to impact every aspect of my life for 6 years. If a fence can help with that, a minimalist, perhaps that'll help, but I'm not even sure it will. But
So you're referring to during the actual construction?
I can't go somewhere to work. My office is in Virginia. I work out of my home. I conduct
Okay,
business there from
understand
8 a.m. to 5 p.m., if not longer, every day. I'm on calls a minimum of 4 hours a day. This is going to impact me, and to try to sell my house now, who's going to buy it? I'm not going to make anything off it, and then I can't afford to buy anything else. Maybe one of your house like that. So I'm kind of in a quandary. Where am I going to work? A fence could potentially help, but
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to close the public portion again. And we'll return to board deliberation, questions, comments. Mr. Cost?
More comments, I think. There was a lot of discussion from the public about impacts to the Wright estate and to this homeowner and others. But everything I heard, particularly with stormwater management, flooding, erosion, wetlands, the engineer has really done seemed to address those thoroughly, answered all the questions, at least to my satisfaction. And then I know the city engineer will still be looking at it, the state's going to looking at it. So I do believe that this project won't impact any kind of off-site downstream flooding or other stormwater type events. I'm particularly pleased that they're small units, so we're not talking about, we're not using the word affordable or what is it, missing middle housing, but because of the size of these, I think they're going to be naturally that type of housing. So that's really needed. That's what we've been talking about here for years. And so I appreciate this type of development. As far as noise, I'm absolutely not a noise expert, but the little bit I do know is that to create a buffer that stops noise from going off-site is not a 6-foot fence or not a row of trees. It just doesn't work. It takes a lot of area if you're going to buffer sound. I know that a little bit from working on noise walls all around Washington, D.C. So I don't want to have expectations that putting up a fence will really mitigate the noise. I'd let the engineers probably speak to that more, or maybe even an acoustic type person, but I don't want expectations that a fence is going to solve a concern about any kind of sound coming off of the site. So just to sum it up, I think it's a much-needed project, and it's going to fill a real important need, and particularly being near the hospital would be great, so that people who want to work at the hospital might live there. So, yeah.
Thank you. Would anyone like to address the issue of development of regional impact? Ms. Marklin? Thank you.
Of course, this does not seem like it would have any regional impact.
Mayor Khan.
Thank you. I appreciate the input that we've gotten from the community. I think those were good questions. I understand the neighbors' concern. I think I agree with the noise condition. I don't think a 6-foot fence is going to provide much mitigation other than visual relative to sound. I know we've sometimes addressed that condition, but I tend to agree with the opinion of that. And I do want to say that we created the cottage court recognizing that this was urban infill that it is going to occur where we have existing water and sewer, where we've got existing residential areas, and this is one of the strategies the city has embraced for addressing its housing shortage. So I think relative to your question about regional impact, there's some localized effects, but regionally, this is a desirable development and one that should help the city address its housing needs.
Thank you. Mr. Hafer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The plans seem complete to our standards, and commend the proposal in terms of its completeness. I certainly feel the awkwardness of the concerns brought by Ms. Perkins. We worked together in a previous life at Markham Corporation together, so I have a slight personal relationship there, so it feels a bit awkward to be in this position, but you know, to the mayor's point, this is the sort of housing development we need. It feels like all the required conditions are in place, and I'm comfortable voting for our approval and our step in this process at this point.
Thank you. Other comments? Seeing none, let's proceed to the vote, unless you wanted to propose an amendment that would require a fence. Okay. So the motion and seconded, as read by Ms. Mastrogiovanni, is on the table.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
I think that issue about a fence is something that I think the owner could address, given the input that he's heard. I don't think that it's a condition that we should go down that path in this instance. It's not going to address the homeowner's concern as stated, but there are impacts that of the construction site that could be addressed, and I leave that to the developer to address as he sees fit.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we are calling the vote, so all those in favor of, what number are we at? We're at, all those in favor of approval for major site plan for PB 2025-06, please indicate. Any opposed? PB 2025-06 is approved. Thank you. Okay, next.
Thank you very much.
Next, we're looking for an update on the master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Mary Brenner, Senior Planner. There's a lot going on with the master plan project at the moment. So the first update is that we have launched an online story map for the project, which is at keenmasterplan.com. And then there's a short 2-question survey that you can take along with that story map. And the online story map goes through the 6 pillars and some draft goals. And basically the survey asks you a question, is there anything missing? And then there's an open-ended question for you to write in any comments. So this is really like the last big opportunity for people to really impact the content of the master plan. So I really strongly encourage people to take that. The survey is only up for a couple more days. It comes down on April 30th. So if you haven't taken that, please take a quick look. Again, it's keenmasterplan.com for the story map. And then right at the top of that page and also at the bottom, there's a share your feedback button, and it's just a 2-question survey. Also, there is a big celebration and future summit on June 3rd. So that will be at the Keene Public Library in Heberton Hall from 5 to 7 p.m. And that's open to the public. We are asking for registration mostly just to get a head count for food. So we have a caterer coming. It should be a good time. And it will be an opportunity to hear directly from staff and the consultant team. Harold actually will be talking about the master plan process and what the results are. And then it's
That
also
should be a
going to.
big draw.
Yes. No, he knew. But it's going to be an interactive event. So it'll be a brief presentation followed by stations around the room for the different 6 pillars. And if the weather's nice, we're going to have a station outside and activities and things like that. There's also going to be a raffle. So we're trying to make it more like fun and engagement and more celebratory. I also wanted to mention that in terms of the pace of the project, it keeps picking up steam. So we're in a really fast-paced portion of the project at the moment. So there's a master plan steering committee meeting next week, Tuesday. We're going to have a draft prioritization survey, not a draft. We're going to have a decision-making tool coming out soon that's going to be sent out to decision makers. So we're including the planning board in this. It should be ready to send out tomorrow or Wednesday, I believe. And that's going to be sent to the planning board, city council, city leadership, and task force members that worked on the master plan steering committee, as well as the master plan steering committee itself. And this is going to be asking you to prioritize of the different goals and action steps under each goal, what's the highest priority for the city to take immediately. And so that will help us figure out our implementation plan. And then that will be due May 11th. So we'll send out an email. Again, that's not open to the general public. It's just open to a select few groups to get more pinpointed and detailed feedback on how the different strategies should be prioritized. So that will be going out in the next couple of days, and we're asking you to take that and get back to us by May 11th. And then the draft plan is, we're targeting June 3rd to have the draft plan kind of sent out for review to the master plan steering committee. And then they're going to be hopefully having their final meeting on June 10th. And then if they're comfortable with it at that point, they could potentially vote on it that night to send it to city council and then the planning board for adoption. So again, moving very fast. Any questions?
Mr. Cost?
Thank you. So it is moving really fast, so hold on. But at the draft stage that you're talking about, it sounds like there isn't, that's just like dotting i's and t's. I mean, it doesn't sound like there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to have all new, fresh input, right? I mean, it's going to be kind of done.
Yeah, we'll have to sort of take stock and make sure that the community is comfortable with it. So the future summit will be one opportunity. The steering committee is going to be our first sort of group to really take a deep dive into it. But really, there shouldn't be any surprises in the draft. We've gotten the vision report. We've gotten the different pillars sort of fleshed out with different goals and strategies for each pillar. So hopefully at this point, nothing will be a surprise. And it will mostly be tweaking. However, if that's not the case, we will certainly, we can always put a pause on things, but the intent is for the plan to go into the adoption phase in June. Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner. Okay, so I think we can move into staff updates. I saw Councilor Haas here, and he left. He throws a smoke bomb in and then leaves.
All right. So thank you, Mr. Chair, Mary Brenner, Senior Planner again. The first staff update is that the City Council has requested all city boards and commissions to provide the city council with a report by July 1st. And this would just be to inform the city council of your activities for the year. And so I believe we're sort of requesting that each board and commissions, this includes all boards and commissions in the city, not just the planning board. We're really just asking, the chairs to put together a brief written document that summarizes what each board or commission has worked on throughout the year, and just touch on highlights to give the city council a sense of who you are, what you do, what you've accomplished, and what your goals are for the upcoming year. So that request did come in from city council. Do you have any other questions about that?
Yeah, anyone have any questions about it? Mr. Cost?
I mean, for the planning board, I mean, not that we shouldn't do it, but it sounds like all of that is documented and enshrined in minutes and videos and everything. And so to pull all of that out and give them a summary, I mean, I'm not being facetious here, but it sounds like, tell me the 5 things you did this week at work. So I mean, is the point just to say, here's top level big things we did? But to go, if it has to go into a lot of detail of all the things that were talked about, that's pretty onerous for lots of people.
I think if you read Mr. Haas's memo,
Yeah.
His idea was to get more recognition for each of the boards, as well as the council to have a little more visibility. They're not reading our minutes every month, I can guess. So
So it's just
understand
it's a
your
high
point.
level, it's a high level, basically.
Yeah, undoubtedly, it'll be in a little bit of extra work for staff, but at least for the planning board, I'm gonna try to structure it so it's not a tedious data dive.
Yeah.
I'd just like
Yeah.
to add, I don't think that there's the expectation that every 20 boards and commissions are going to submit these by a date certain. I don't think that was this council's intent at all. It's that over a year, at some time, at a logical point, that the reports be submitted. I'd further suggest that it's not just to have a recap, but it's because, as you say, it could tee up future issues. And, that's probably the most useful way of leaning into this, is to give the council a little heads up as to what's coming. I mean, the accomplishments are good too, but, to that extent, I can see where, let the legislature have its say on zoning and regulations, and then let our staff absorb what some of those changes and conditions are, and help us understand and then convey that up the chain.
Thanks for that insight. Ms. Brenner, would you like to move on to the item B?
Sure. So I think we already discussed this last time, so this is really just confirming. We had discussed switching to every 6 months for providing updates on administrative approvals and minor site plan approvals to this board. So instead of, we really just put this on your agenda again to kind of remind you that that's what we talked about last month, so we're going to move forward with that plan. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads, so it sounds like that sounds okay to everyone. And again, this is really just us providing you a list of the projects. If you want more information about any of them, I encourage you, when we send out the packet, if you see something that you have questions on or you want more information about, if you could just send us a quick email or call us, we'll make sure to bring the whole project folder with us to the meeting so that you'll have it. Or you can always come up to the 4th floor to view the whole project folder. Any questions about that item?
This is mainly just a change from annual to every 6 months?
That's correct, yep. And to prepare these reports, it's not a ton of effort on our
Just
end.
a
It's
bullet
mostly
list
just,
of, all the projects.
yeah, we pull a report and then it's really just formatting it into a memo. Yeah, so it's not a big lift.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think most important, to me anyway, is that you're maintaining a list.
Yep.
And that if the board desired that list for whatever disclosure, transparency, that we could do so. And, you know, you can routinize this as you see fit, but or the chairman and the planning, the officers, you know, you define it, but that it's accessible, I think, is the most important thing.
I agree, yep.
And just another quick reminder, all of the administrative approvals, when we issue an administrative approval, we do post that on the community development webpage. So if you go to keenanh.gov, and then I'm assuming it's still /community-development, but you could get to it from the homepage of the website. We have all of the administrative approvals posted there, and then they stay up for, like 60 days roughly. They get taken down once a quarter. So we don't leave them up forever because we don't want the page to get cluttered. But we do keep them up for at least 30 days and I guess up to 90. So if you wanted to follow along, I guess if somebody asks you about a recent approval, you could go to the webpage and just see it right there.
But your intent of the annual or semi-annual report is that we'd see everything that happened in 6 months.
Exactly, yep.
Good enough.
Okay, and then I know you included a chart of the major site plan and minor site plan thresholds.
Yes, so for this agenda item, I did prepare a short presentation. Looking at the time, I just want to take the temperature of the room and see if you want to postpone this conversation or still have it tonight. It's not a long presentation, but I just wanted to review the thresholds with you and talk about a few different scenarios and get your thoughts. And I don't want to force the issue if everybody's tired. Happy to do it tonight. Like, I'm not trying to get out of it. I just wanted to check with you before I just launch into a presentation.
Given that we're very likely to have a very long meeting next month, maybe we should try to
Okay.
address this tonight.
Great. So if it's okay, I'm just going to move up.
Mr. Chair, can I just add one thing about the minor project approvals while Ms. Brunner's getting set up for the presentation?
Of course.
Thank you. So similarly to how we post the administrative planning decisions on the department webpage, the minor project board actions, every time they meet, this is actually the exact same thing that we do for the planning board. Any decisions that are made are posted on the board webpage. So if someone did want to see what motions and decisions were made during a minor project review committee meeting, we post those the next day after the meeting. We have very few projects at this point in time that go through that actual review channel. I think we might have some coming up, but I just wanted to say that that's another place where you can find actions that the minor project review committee has taken.
Thank you.
Great. So just give me a second here. Okay. All right, so I know this is a little bit repetitive of the training that we did on site plan review in general, but I did just want to quickly review your authority for site plan review, which is in New Hampshire Revised Statute annotated 67443. Under the state statute, it allows municipalities that have adopted a zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations to authorize the planning board to review and approve site plans for, quote, the development or change or expansion of use of tracts for non-residential uses or for multifamily dwelling units. It goes on to define multifamily as a structure with more than 2 units. So all that to say that you do not have jurisdiction over single family and 2-family. Everything else you can review through your site plan review powers. So in the city of Keene, the planning board has delegated some of your site plan review authority to a committee of staff. It's called the Minor Project Review Committee. And the thresholds for site plan review are shown up on the screen. So basically, you know, if your building is above a certain size or, you know, impacts a certain amount of land, so there's a certain amount of land disturbance greater than an acre, or you're increasing traffic by a certain amount, you have to go automatically to the planning board for major site plan review. So it's those thresholds, some of them are very black and white, cut and dry. Like if you meet that number, bam, you go. Staff doesn't have any flexibility. Some of them, like the last category, there is a little bit of discretion on the part of staff as to whether or not something needs to go to the planning board or not. If you fall below one of those thresholds, you go to that minor project review committee for a minor site plan review. The benefit to that is that it's a committee of staff that meets during the day and the time frame is significantly shorter. So for the planning board, you have your application deadline, and it's 6 weeks before the planning board meeting. Typically, an applicant will get a conditional approval, which means they have to now meet those conditions of approval before they can get final approval, where they have to come back to the planning board, and then they can get their building permit. With the minor project review committee, I believe it's a 3-week turnaround, so much shorter. And so that is of a huge benefit to applicants. It's still a noticed public hearing. Abutters still get noticed, so they still get that certified mail notification that the public hearing is happening. They have the opportunity to come into our office and look at the project ahead of time or send in written comments if they can't make it to the public hearing, all of that. And then if you fall below the threshold for a minor project review, it's reviewed administratively by staff. So really quickly, the thresholds, the first threshold is just the square footage of gross floor area of new construction. So if you're building a new principal building or structure that's greater than 5,000 square feet in gross floor area, you're automatically at the planning board. If it's between 1,000 and 5,000, you can go to the minor project review committee. Under 1,000, staff can review. Now we have another one that's additions. So if you have an existing building or structure and you're adding an addition that's greater than 15% of the gross floor area of the existing principal building, that's the threshold for major, for planning board. If it's between 10 and 15%, it goes to minor project review committee. Below 10%, it can be reviewed administratively by staff. If your traffic results in a change or increase of vehicle trips per day of 100 or per peak hour of 50, that's an automatic, you go to planning board. Below that, it could be minor project or administrative, it's not clear. It just says increase of 100 per day or 50 per hour goes to planning board. Below that, we just look at to see if you meet any of the other thresholds to determine what your level of review is. Installation of impervious surfaces such as pavement or gravel that exceeds 10,000 square feet in contiguous area goes to the planning board. And then for minor, it just says less than that, which at the discretion of the community development director and based on the nature of the proposal warrants minor site plan review. So again, some of these have some discretion built in. Land disturbance that impacts 1 acre or greater of land area goes to planning board. Less than 1 acre can go to minor project review committee at the discretion of the community development director. The next one is modifications to the site or building, such as lighting, landscaping, facade alteration, et cetera, which at the discretion of the community development director or their designee warrants major site plan review. So this is the one where we would often consult with the planning board chair. If somebody has you know, basically your architecture and visual appearance changes to that. We'll usually check with the chair just to kind of get another opinion about, do we think the board is going to have any concerns or that abutters might have concerns? If so, we typically send it to the planning board. If not, we'd send it to the minor project review committee or review by staff. And then finally, the last one is kind of what I think of as a catch-all, which is a change of use, which at the discretion of the community development director or their designee warrants major site plan review or minor site plan review, or it could be done administratively. So that one's kind of a catch-all that gives, like, if there's a change of use involved, it could potentially go to the planning board or to the minor site plan review committee. It's really, that's a very discretionary threshold. And so I wanted to give you some examples of how this can or has applied to residential projects in Keene. So example number one is new construction. Somebody comes in, they have an undeveloped lot, nothing's there, it's vacant, and they're proposing to build a 4-unit multifamily building that's 4,600 square feet of gross floor area, and that would probably be sent for minor site plan review because it's under that 5,000 square foot thresholds. 4 units, you're not going to get enough traffic to warrant major site plan. They're probably not going to impact more than an acre of land area, so that's going to be minor project. Another example, so now let's talk about a 3-unit building. And the pictures here are just pictures of houses in Keene. It's not related to this. So in this example, the applicant wants to construct a 1,000 square foot addition to a 3-unit building. The 3-unit building, the existing building is 5,559 square feet. They're adding a 1,000 square foot expansion. They're not increasing the number of units, so it's going from 3 units to 3 units. There's no change of use. It's, you know, only 1,000 square feet of new construction, but the addition is about 18% of the principal structure, so it automatically triggers major site plan review for a 1,000 square foot addition to a 3-unit house. So that's something that we've kind of flagged as like, ooh, we might want to talk about that, because do you really want to see a 3-unit house come before you for a 1,000 square foot addition? Maybe, maybe not. But we wanted to just kind of point out this, with the residential uses in particular, the thresholds don't always work maybe the way we think they will. And then the last example is a conversion or a change of use. So this is a real example from the city, which was the conversion of a 92,180 square foot mill building, which was a mix of office space and commercial space, to 90 residential units. When the applicant came to the city, they said there would be no changes to the exterior of the building. There'd be no changes to the site other than some minor like pavement markings. They're estimating a reduction in traffic. So this change of use to 90 units was reviewed administratively by staff because there's nothing really for the board to review. But that is a really big change for the community. So kind of some questions that have come up for staff and that we would love to get clarification on. I'm not saying you have to answer all of these tonight, but the first one is, should a change of use, such as a conversion of commercial space to residential uses, to units, that results in an overall reduction of impacts, require a site plan review? And if so, what is that threshold? Like, what number of units would you want to see something come to you? And where do you think the community would want to be able to have the opportunity to weigh in on that? And then I just put some numbers out here to kind of get the conversation going. But what number of new residential units should require major site plan review? So I just threw out 20 as, maybe you think it's 10, maybe it's 15, I don't know. We're just trying to get the conversation started. And then there's that middle tier that goes to minor project review committee. So what number of new residential units should go to that committee? So again, that would still be a public hearing, still require notice to abutters. The reason why I did put some thought into what that number might be. So under our current regulations, 10 residential units currently is the threshold for requiring a traffic analysis. So that's kind of why I put 10 as being the start point for sending it to site plan review. And then what would be the number of new residential units that should go to administrative planning review? And then my last question is around that threshold for additions, because that was something that was new when we did the update to the land development code. We were actually trying to solve a problem where at the time, we had a threshold of 1,000 square feet of new construction, automatically sent a project to the planning board. But we have a lot of really massive buildings in the city, especially out in our industrial districts and our corporate park district and things like that, where a 1,000 square foot addition is actually small and it's not very much to review. And so they were having to come to planning board for all these small little additions to their building. So we were trying to solve that problem by making it a percentage. But when you start looking at really small buildings, it has an unintended impact of smaller buildings. Just doing an addition might be sent up to the planning board based on the percent increase of the addition. And that was not necessarily the intent. So we wanted to get your thoughts on that threshold and whether it should be modified. Should we only have it apply to commercial uses and not residential? And if that's the case, how should we treat mixed-use buildings? So I don't necessarily think that we're looking for answers from all of you tonight, but I just wanted to get these questions out there, get you thinking about them. And then if you think it's worthwhile having staff work on a proposal and coming back to you with something, we could do that and get something scheduled in the next few months for you to actually hold a public hearing on revising your regulations if you felt it was needed.
Mary, what is the public's input process to administrative review?
Yeah, so that's the downside to administrative review. There really is none. The only, I guess you might call it input opportunity, is that we post the administrative decision on our website. And technically, people do have the right to appeal that decision, I believe, to the planning board. I'm looking at Megan, but
Do they require standing for that?
That's a good question. I think that to have standing to appeal a site plan, that would depend on whether or not they're in a butter or they have some other standing. With the administrative planning review, I believe it's what our local regulations say, and I would have to check to see exactly what that language is. But
Mr. Chair, if I
Yeah,
may
please.
clarify. So under Article 27.5 of the Land Development Code, appeals of the Community Development Director's decision have to be made to the planning board, provided that the notice of appeal of the decision is filed with the Community Development Department within 20 calendar days from the date of the Community Development Director's decision.
Okay. Doesn't say anything about standing. Okay.
Yeah, it says any aggrieved party appealing a decision of the Community Development Director is entitled to a de novo public hearing before the planning board.
Yeah, so the language that we use in that section that Ms. Fortson just read, any aggrieved party, is what the statute used to read, and it has since changed to narrow who has standing to appeal in the case of a site plan. But the administrative planning is not technically a site plan review. So I think this would basically, if somebody were to appeal an administrative decision, it would have the effect of forcing it up to the planning board for a more formal review process.
And it would be the same process for minor site plan appeals as well.
Okay. Mr. Cost?
Thank you. I had a question back on the 1 acre thing. 1 acre in a business park, an industrial park, in the, I don't know, rural districts are very different than 1 acre here downtown. And so the impact of an acre, that's a big piece of property anywhere, you know, in developed areas, in urban areas. So if someone's going to do something on an acre in town, that sounds like it's important to know about and to have a chance to look at and review. Is that saying we wouldn't?
So that's why we this is something that, this exact discussion is something that we had with the steering committee for the land development code and why we have these catch-alls at the bottom. So there's modifications to the site or building, which at the discretion of the community development director or their designee warrants major site plan review. And then the bottom one, which is change of use. So those are really in there to try and capture instances where maybe on its face a project doesn't meet a numerical threshold that pushes it up to the planning board, but where we know as staff that the planning board is going to want to see it. So to answer your question, if there were a project in the downtown that was impacting an acre of area, it most likely would meet another threshold, and if it didn't, I think we could fall back on either the modifications to the site or building or the change of use one if it were a change of use to push it up to the planning board. As staff, we take a somewhat cautious approach, but we are, like, a big impetus of the land development code was to make the regulations more clear and streamlined and efficient and trying to be more business friendly and customer friendly. So we're always trying to balance that with making sure that we're kind of erring on the side of caution, if that makes sense, with what comes to the planning board. But yeah, there's still definitely some discretion built in for that, for all the what ifs. Yeah. Was that it?
I don't know. It makes me a little bit concerned that not, I know you guys wouldn't do it, but the community development director could say, oh, I know it's an acre, but it's down at the end of downtown, and it's great, it'll be an Arby's, and I'm happy. I know we can't have drive-ins and being, but the point is, I think anything in any of the downtown development districts is critical, and an acre particularly is a big property. So just seems like, I don't know if there's a way to carve out that.
Yeah, that's, I'll get to you for a sec. It's an interesting perspective that we would have kind of different thresholds for different districts. Just entirely possible. Complicated, but entirely possible.
Yeah.
Mayor Khan?
Yeah, and that was, I think the matrix on this isn't a straight line. I think it's dependent on zoning. I think when something changes from residential to commercial or vice versa, that's significant. It's significant to our overall development in the city, if not to the specific location and the abutters. I would feel the same way about industrial being converted to a non-industrial use. So I think that's important. I think 1,000 square foot sounds fairly insignificant until you get to a high-density area. And, you know, I think of the east side neighbors, and you take a 3-unit existing unit, and you add another 1,000 square feet onto that building. Yeah, I mean, the abutters just might have a reasonable, a reason to want to have that day before a group of fellow citizens. So I don't think this is all that simple to try to draw the lines in the sand, straight lines.
Mr. Hafer.
Thank you. Thanks for the short presentation. Lots of good stuff to think about here. I'm wondering about our process, I guess, and knowing myself that I'm starting to fall asleep, 9:20 at night. What's as a committee, what's our ability to meet as a committee when we're not working through gravel pits? And you know, can we have a training, a meeting that's workshop, more, there's a number of items on more time we never seem to get to. There's questions that seems like staff are asking us to try to weigh in, trying to to add, to support their decision-making. I just wonder if we should, with the amount of work we seem to have on our agenda each month, and big meetings, contentious meetings, if we might want to consider that at some point in the future, something so we can give our best efforts towards supporting staff. So I would support that as a committee member if we needed to find an additional time to meet at some point.
Yeah, I think it's a little dangerous to meet, because the planning board meets, we have to notice it, and, regardless of what we think we're gonna talk about. So I
Sure,
think it's
but-
easier in this case to interact directly with staff via email. Mary can send out these questions perhaps, we can weigh in, and she can kind of winnow and sift, and we can go from there.
There's no facility for workshop, talking amongst ourselves, a retreat, a training session for the committee. Maybe it has to be noticed, but it's not necessarily minuted or I don't know.
Yeah, so if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please, yeah.
So anytime the board is conducting business, you are subject to the right to know law in New Hampshire, so you have to notice the meeting, have an agenda for the meeting, take minutes. There are some communities that I've worked with back when I was at the Regional Planning Commission, where the planning board actually does meet twice a month. One meeting is for reviewing petitions or applications, and then the next meeting is their working meeting. Because the planning board especially in smaller towns, does a lot more than just reviewing development proposals. They're in charge of developing and implementing the master plan, zoning ordinance changes, updating, they do this a lot. So I know of at least 2 communities that have that structure where they have one meeting a month that's for reviewing applications, and then their second meeting is just for conducting some of that more administrative business. So it's certainly possible if you want to do that. It is tricky from a scheduling perspective, just because we have already 2 meetings a month for you, one with the joint planning board and PLD, and one as the planning board to review development proposals.
3 meetings a month.
So potentially an option could be on a month where you don't have a joint committee meeting scheduled, like it gets canceled, you could maybe hold a special planning board meeting that date instead. But in terms of the process, going back to your original question, your process for amending the regulations, once you think you have a proposal that you're happy with, you do need to hold a public hearing and.
You seem to be looking for a broad discussion about, hey, what do you think? Should it be 10 or 12? Should it be 15 or 20?
Yes.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Discussion for
Oh.
earlier in the evening.
Sorry.
I'm so tired now. It just seems like now we're singing concert this Saturday night. I'm just suggesting, it seems you're looking for some input from a group of people who've been sitting for 3 hours now, and it's not the right time to get good input from us, in my opinion. So I would encourage us as a board to find some different ways to give you that input that you seem to be seeking.
Yeah, so that, I suggest an email exchange with staff. We can figure that out.
And if I might,
Yeah.
so just to clarify, we got to be careful that it's not going through the chair, that no member of the committee is chain soliciting feedback that could deny public interest, or the public, so there's a 91A disclosure issue with that, and you'll need to solicit individual comments from each of us if you do that, and assemble it, and still have some kind of conversation, transparent and open. That's the only way I can see it. I suggest you contact the city attorney, because we're very, very careful about this issue. The second thing is that we have 3 meetings a month, and one of them is the master plan committee. And when that drops off, and maybe it does soon. You'll have to consider when that committee is discharged. But in any case, does that open up the possibility of an additional meeting? You know, I think none of us want a second meeting. I hate to be routinized like that, but, you know, we could do a workshop and publicly notice it and you know, because we already know that we've got a third meeting date that we may not be using in July, for instance. Anyway, those are a couple concerns that I think.
Great. And Mr. Chair, so to the idea for sending comments via email, I share the mayor's concern to some extent about making sure that we're giving the public an opportunity to hear the different ideas and comments from all the different board members. So I would suggest either scheduling a public workshop or continuing to have this agenda item on future agendas so that we can at least share what ideas have been sent to staff or summarize the ideas that we've heard and just kind of keep this conversation going somewhere that is publicly accessible. So that's what I would recommend.
No, I agree 100% that before we reach any conclusions on changing any of these things, it's got to be part of a regular planning board meeting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
But
Would say too, it might be helpful in the future if you send this out with our packet so that we can sort of review and have an idea, and then we, you know, might have a fresher mind at that point and can actually provide feedback.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
thanks, Mary.
Okay. Thank you. And that's it for staff updates.
Okay. Any items of new business that board members would like to pile on to this meeting tonight? Or for a future meeting? Okay. Upcoming dates. The Joint Committee of the Planning Board and PLD, May 12th, 6:30 PM. Planning Board Steering Committee, May 13th, 12 PM. Planning Board Site Visit, May 21st, 8 AM, which will be to be confirmed, but depending on what applications we have for the May meeting. And then finally, the next regular Planning Board meeting is May 27, 6:30 PM. Snow storage is going to be pushed again, I think. And with that, I am going to adjourn at 9:28.